now I'd like to introduce and let her tell you the story herself, Riddle of Team Landon. I'm very honored.
I always feel like I have to eat it for you guys to hear me. Thank you so much for coming out today and for being interested, in cannabis education. And, a lot of these events that people throw for cannabis education is just a bunch of people, smoking weed and buying drinks and all of these things. And it's never about the education, never about the medical behind it, about the legislations behind it, nothing like that, the research. And I'm really honored to be a part of something with such amazing doctors and activists speaking with us. As you can see, my son was diagnosed with high-risk T-cell ALL leukemia, which is the most commonly diagnosed cancer in children today. He was diagnosed at 2.5 years old, and within 30 days of his MMR vaccine, Landon was dying from leukemia. And when Landon was diagnosed, they told us they had never seen it progress so fast. He was given a 4 to 8% chance to live 24 hours. And, when your child is sick or if anything happens, your world comes to a stop. And anything would have been better than them saying that Landon had cancer. It's such an unknown, I'm not sure if any of you guys know anything about cancer, but I sure didn't. And I definitely did not know anything about cannabis or what it could do. So unfortunately, Landon started chemotherapy and radiation, much like all of the children, in the world that are diagnosed with cancer. And it did not take long for it to have very devastating effects on Landon. Within 60 days, Landon was vomiting multiple times a day. He was enduring nerve damage from the chemotherapy, radiation burns on his skin, chemical burns on his bottom from everything coming out. A lot of people don't know that when your child goes through chemotherapy treatments, every single fluid in their body is radioactive. So if I was changing diapers, whenever I was putting these radioactive clothes on, radioactive gowns, I had to dispose of it through a radioactive waste company. And if it got on my skin, it would burn me. This is what was going into my child. And within 90 days, Landon was dying. He had stopped eating, and when I say stopped eating, he did not put a grain of rice into his mouth for over 25 days. Once he did start eating, he did not eat more than 500 calories a day, which is not enough to keep yourself alive. Landon was in so much pain that at 2 years old, he was on liquid morphine, Oxycontin, Ativan, promethazine, and they really didn't help. They made Landon very high, like out there high. He was uncomfortable, he had really bad anxiety, which is why they gave him Ativan. And no matter what hurdle Landon faced, what sickness, what side effect, we were told that they had to keep going, that they were going to treat this cancer no matter what, and that Landon probably wasn't going to make it, but that they were not going to let up. And when it got down to the point that Landon weighed 20 pounds, he was diagnosed at 40 pounds. He weighed 20 pounds, he could no longer walk, he couldn't talk. And they were okay with that. They were okay with, we'll just increase his narcotics. I was not okay with it. Landon was on 25 medications. 6 of them were narcotics. And we could see it. He was going to die. And it was not a quick happening either. It was very slow, very progressive. My family put out there to our social media following that we were looking for anything that might help Landon to fight this and fight the chemotherapy. Throughout all of the things that we received, cannabis was one that kind of kept popping up. And of course, in the beginning, my family was like, yeah, right. You want us to give pot to a 2-year-old? Okay. And, you never really, connect those ideas that we're already giving him Oxycontin. That is one of the harshest pharmaceuticals out there. So when it came down to it, I was not scared. I was more scared of losing my son and him dying. And so we took him to Colorado and started him on high doses of cannabis oil. Within 2 to 3 weeks, I had him on a gram a day. And the changes in Landon were almost immediate. He was able to smile. He wanted me to hold him. He asked for food. He did sleep a lot of those, probably the first 7 days he slept 20 hours a day, the first 5. His body was so depleted from everything that he needed to recoup. And I honestly believe that if we would have waited not even 30 days longer, Landon would not have been able to pull through. Within 2 weeks of having Landon on 500 milligrams of THC or higher, I was able to completely replace, not wean, not cut in half, completely replace all of his narcotics. And it was very impressive. Landon was having withdrawals. That was kind of what put my family over the edge. Landon would be having a good day, we would take him out, and all of a sudden he would be sweating, clammy, he would start vomiting, shaking. We didn't know what was wrong with him. And everyone chalked it up to, oh, it's just the chemo. But as soon as I would get him home and give him that dose of Oxycontin and morphine, it would stop. And I asked his doctors and oncologists, I said, I think that Landon's addicted. I think that if, even when he does not need these medications, if he doesn't have it, then he gets to the point that he's so ill, he does need it. And this oncologist looked at me and said, there's a difference, Sierra, in dependency and addiction. And I told her, not a lot of people know our whole story, but I'm a recovering addict from pharmaceuticals and heroin. And I have a little over 2 years sober now. And Landon was withdrawing. And I told that lady, I said, do you have any clean time? Have you ever gone down that journey? And she was appalled. Oh, I'm a medical professional. I cannot believe that you would even think that I would do illicit drugs. And I said, I have, and I detox myself. And let me tell you, lady, the only difference in dependency and addiction is my 2-year-old's not going to kick down my door or your door for drugs. Because you're giving it to him. He has no reason to commit these behaviors that are linked to drug addicts, but he had every symptom and sign. And, that was really the final straw for us. And they told us we would have to wean Landon off of these medications for 2 years, or he would become very ill. He could have seizures. His heart could stop. He could develop palpitations. I mean, it was absolutely insane. And once we got those narcotics out of Landon's system, like I said, it took less than 2 weeks once we hit that optimal dose. Landon really improved. He really improved. Once that fog lifted and he was no longer sick from these prescriptions, he was able to handle the chemotherapy better. He was able to start healing. He was needing 15 to 30 blood or platelet transfusions. Once we started chemotherapy, he received the same intensity and frequency of chemotherapy for another 6 months, and he needed 1 or none. I mean, it's almost unheard of to not need any blood or platelet transfusions during intensive chemotherapy. And Landon's neuropathy completely reversed itself. His doctors had no idea what was going on. High doses of CBD regenerated Landon's reflexes and nerves from a 98% degeneration to 100%. As you can see, he has no problems now.
That's awesome.
The amount of lying, the amount of cover-ups that we have been put through is affecting our children. It's affecting my child. And Landon was sentenced, if you will, to 4 years of chemotherapy, ending in 2016. I started fighting for no chemotherapy in May of 2013, and we have officially won. They're taking him off 2 years ago. They are going to take his cord out. They're not going to require us to take him in for anything except to be tested. And, a little over a year ago, that was not the situation. I moved my family to Colorado so that we could have safe access because people were starting to realize in Utah what we were doing. And, once his oncologist walked in and was like, oh, hello, Landon, how are you? I saw you guys on CNN last night. I was like, Mom, get the car. Oh, God. Oh, yeah, we gotta go. And they were like, honestly, we can all agree to say that we did not think Landon would make it, and we cannot believe that he's doing so well now. And we hope that your family, does well in Colorado. And that was it. I was like, ooh, okay. So we went to Colorado, where I assumed that they would be just as open and receptive. I mean, that's one of the most progressive states. You know, he was on a special strain of CBD, he was using the high THC, everything seemed fine. I went to his oncologist meeting and told him what I had done, and I was really excited, you know, diet and nutrition, alkaline water, cannabis oil, and they told me that I was everything but a bad parent. They said I was going to kill my son. They said that cannabis was a complete fable and farce, all it would do to help his nausea, and that they were calling Child Protective Services on me. And I told them, you know, I really thought, there's no way. There's no way. I'm sorry that you feel that way. I do not feel that way, and I will get, you know, another oncologist. And I left. And within 24 hours, CPS was at my door. And, you know, they told me, hello, we're here. We hear that, you know, report that you are collecting treatment for your very sick child, that you have a child with cancer. And Landon's like, hey, I'm Landon. What's going on? And running around. And they were like, is this your son? And I said, yes, it is. And here's paperwork stating that he's cancer-free, and I have it on me at all times, dated within 30 days. And they were like, well, you know, what is the issue? And I told them, I'm giving him cannabis oil. And she was like, that's amazing, and, you know, really interested in it. And they went back and said, you know, we don't understand, to our doctors, and the doctor said, it's not your place to understand, CPS. It's your place to enforce the safety and welfare of this child, and we want a meeting with all of your, you know, the head of CPS, the head of DHS, the head of oncology, and I got to bring some people along for, you know, my side of it. And Dr. Bob Maloney was one of the only doctors that was willing to come with us to that meeting. And the doctor that wrote the recommendation for Landon to receive medical marijuana wouldn't even speak up in the meeting. Yes, it was terrible. But Dr. Bob came and we tried to educate them, and he explained to them the cannabinoid system, and I will never forget it. Landon's oncologist gets on and he says, this is Dr. Stephen Hunger with Children's Hospital, Colorado, and Dr. Bob Maloney, how many children with T-cell ALL leukemia have you treated? Because I've treated thousands. And of course, Dr. Bob had to say, I'm not a treating physician. Oh, so you never treated one, okay. I mean, they treated us like we were stupid, like Dr. Bob was stupid. Like we had no idea what we were talking about, like we were just hippies growing weed in our houses. And unfortunately, at that time, there was no oncologist willing to stand up with me and say that Landon needed chemotherapy. I'm sorry, that he did not need chemotherapy. That's all they were saying, is that he needed it. So the chemotherapy that was prescribed for Landon was 3 years, and it was 90% at home. They wanted me to poison my kid at home, not even take him in to let them do it. So I told them, you know, are you going to come to my house twice a day? Are you that invested in this cancer treatment that you're going to come and give it to him? And of course they wouldn't. But if you don't do it, we're taking him away, we're going to put him in foster care, your rights will be stripped, all of this. So for the next 12 months, I picked up all of those drugs and set them on my shelf. And I took Landon in every 30 days, and they're like, you know, we're not seeing chemotherapy in his blood. Oh, well, he eats late at night, and, you know, coming up with all these excuses. He drinks too much water, you know, I don't know. So they went as far as to sending Landon's blood to Washington, D.C. to try to prove that I was not getting this chemotherapy and that he was going to die. I'm sure Dr. Bob remembers. They told CPS that they could guarantee them on their medical degrees that without 3 months, maximum 6 months of these prescription pills, chemotherapies, and steroids, that Landon would relapse and die. They used the words die, that my child would die, and that I would be committing murder, that by not giving him chemotherapy, I was killing my child.
Wow, that's terrible.
It was terrible.
Yeah.
So the 2% of the treatment plan that's done in a hospital is a small IV chemotherapy. And Landon had to go in for that. By itself, it's not enough to cure cancer. It's only enough to make you violently ill. At 13 months, I went in, and it was a long 13 months, guys, of Landon being very sick for, 3-4 days after that chemotherapy injection, and of them trying to constantly have him taken from my care. I was reported more than 5 times, of them sending his blood to Washington, D.C., of all of these crazy happenings. But fortunately for me, the truth was prevailing. Landon was getting better, and every month he tested cancer-free. And so finally, 13 2 months, I took all 12 months in and set them on the table. And I told them, you guys are full of shit.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You told me that he would die without these, and here's all of them. I have them all. You can count them and everything. And at that point, they brought in the head of pharmacology there, and he said, I think that we can all agree that we do not know what cannabis is doing for Landon, that we are not allowed to research it because we receive federal grants at this hospital, but that we want to test Landon, a very invasive test. We're going to go into his bone marrow, pull some out for testing, but we're also going to break off a piece and try to grow it in this crazy way to see if it puts out cancer cells. We're going to test his spinal fluid, his brain fluid, all of these things. Yeah, okay, I was like, okay, let's do this. Landon did all of these invasive procedures with only anesthesia and cannabis. No fentanyl, no morphine. They were blown away that he was able to tolerate these terrible, painful procedures with only cannabis. We refused all narcotics. And one by one, they all came back cancer-free.
Yeah.
So now Landon is going to long year, guys. Oh my gosh, and fortunately for us, I'm very patient, I'm very perseverant, but my poor 4-year-old child now has a lot of damage done to him. He's very angry, he has PTSD. In fact, he's well on his way to being the youngest child in Colorado diagnosed with PTSD. Because of the things that they did to them, because of the medications that they gave my child against my will, he's going to have all of these issues. And I can't imagine if I would have let them do the whole thing, and as I researched, there's so much education out there. St. Jude's is putting out studies. 70% of children that complete this treatment will develop another type of cancer. They will develop another tumor. And there are 46 children a day diagnosed with cancer in the United States. It's not rare anymore. Okay? 46 children every single day. Do the math. That is, it's like 1 in 100 by the time they're 20 will have fought childhood cancer. It's the least funded cancer. I'm sure everybody's seen all the pink ribbons going up everywhere for breast cancer. Last month was childhood cancer awareness. And less than 4% of all federal monies raised, funding, grants, anything goes to childhood cancer. It's the very least funded. And our children, obviously, if there's no children, we're not going to keep progressing very much longer. And I just don't understand why nobody is taking more value into childhood cancer. It's an epidemic, you guys. And it's one that cannabis can cure. I'm tired of seeing my friends' children die because they're in the wrong zip code. I'm tired of my friends being too scared to try cannabis, but then when they only have a week left, they're calling me. They're coming to my house. People show up at my house. My daughter's dying. The morphine and the Oxycontin are not working. We need your help. It's very terrible and tragic when I'm having to help parents ease their child's last days. That's what I'm known for in Utah now, is they all call me to help them when the pharmaceuticals and everything have failed them. If we can just get these oncologists and these doctors to mention it with chemotherapy, let's use it in conjunction with chemotherapy, we would be seeing a lot less children die, a lot less children addicted to dangerous narcotics, and a lot less of our children having these lifelong health issues. They're not creating cures for our children, they're creating lifelong customers. That's what they're doing. They're making sure that they will be in the system for life because they'll always have a health problem. I travel around now with the help of amazing sponsors like Dr. Tammy, and I speak about pediatric cancer and cannabis use. It's not just for adults. Children need cannabis. They need it to help them develop, and especially, we're not treating happy, healthy children here. We're not trying to get our children high. We're trying to make our children live. We're trying to have a better quality of life while we are caregiving for our children. And if any of you guys have ever caregived for a dying or a terminally ill person, it's very taxing, it's very hard. I would like to see these moms using cannabis. I would like to see these moms getting off their Xanax, getting off of their Ambien. These doctors were shoving prescriptions at me just as quick as they were at Landon because they know that you cannot physically do it. You can't stay awake 24 24 hours a day checking on somebody. It's impossible. If we can get cannabis into these families' hands safely is the number one thing. I shouldn't have to go underground to get my child's cannabis oil. I shouldn't have to buy it on the streets. I shouldn't have to go through all these measures and finding the alcohol and finding somebody to extract it for me. There needs to be programs set up. There needs to be programs set up so that parents feel confident, comfortable, they have the education, they have the testing, and they know that they're going to be taken care of, that these people do not want a lifelong customer out of them, and that cannabis oil is safe for their children. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to us and putting up with my crazy child running around everywhere. If anything, please tell somebody about cannabis. Please tell somebody that it's okay for their child fighting cancer, fighting autism, fighting epilepsy, all of these things. There's over 500 children in Colorado now, and we're all refugees. We all came from somewhere else. And they're all seeing amazing results. Out of the 500 that have moved there, I think only 2 or 3 did not see any results at all, and that's because they were strain locked. They depended on one strain to be their miracle, and they needed higher doses of THC. Of course, I'm talking about those CBD plants. And if we can all, as parents, come together, move our children, move our families, and stand up for the plant, it should be more than easy for everyday people to stand behind us. That's all we need is you guys to support us, to help keep us going, to help keep the message spreading farther and farther, to keep our children healthy, to keep CPS from stealing our children, to keep hospitals from stealing our children for research. Because that's exactly what's going on right now. Companies are paying millions of dollars for research on children, and they're finding our children and stealing them. But they're doing it through CPS. That we're medically neglectful, we're going to kill our child with this crazy hippie cannabis nonsense, and they have this brand new patented FDA-approved cure. Please do not be fooled in thinking that these doctors want to cure our children, because they do not. They want the money to make off of the research, and they don't care how many are dying, guys. Out of those 46 a day, 7 will die. If each one of you goes and tells somebody this story, tells Landon's story, tells Brayden Michaela's story, maybe we can get that down to less than 7 of our fellow cancer families dying every day, 7 a day. It's a lot. I really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for having us.
Riddle is part of Team Landon, and you can look for them on Facebook, and they have ways to donate to help them to spread the word.